FNAF VHS tapes are a pretty common thing to react to for channels who've talked about FNAF, but none of them are really scenes from the games. They're separate animations that people have made because they found it fun. But if we were to take this style of Blair Witch found footage and actually get scenes from the game series, which moments would be the scariest? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Oh, and by the way, tell me your favorite FNAF moment in the comments. And at 10, the Bite of 83. The Bite of 83 is the inciting moment to FNAF 4. It's the reason the whole game is happening. Not the reason for the series as a whole, mind you, but considering how the main gameplay of this game is us having nightmare fever coma dreams, this bite is definitely an important one. And while yes, it's certainly disturbing to see on screen in 8-bit, I think it would be even worse to see it as a VHS tape. The realism that we would get from even like crappy footage is so bone-shaking that you can actually like feel as if you're in the situation. This whole genre of found footage really coming from the Blair Witch Project and its incredible marketing strategy. Like, I had a whole unit on marketing like this in college, okay? It's absolutely genius. And if that sort of style of cinematography was used to make like a whole FNAF movie, or even maybe just a couple of clips, we would all be sent screaming. And watching a kid get his skull crushed by an overpowered animatronic is definitely a shocking moment already. Also, did you know that only 17% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed? You may not actually know that you're not subscribed, so be sure you check it. And if you aren't and you've watched this channel multiple times, click the button, okay? It makes me feel better about myself. And at 9, spring locking. Along the same vein as the Bite of 83 tape scenario, a found footage video from one of the missing children's spirits' point of view would be absolutely insane. Just like Blair Witch, but make it FNAF, and that's in essence what the spring locking is. Plus, I would love to get these things in more angles, especially the moment where William starts suffering for like the next 30 plus years, okay? That would make me happy. This man has caused me so much suffering that I hope I get to see him suffer even more, okay? This wouldn't even be a scary VHS tape for me, okay? I'm sure the sound of the spring lock when it actually happens would spook me in the moment, but it would be quickly washed away by pleasure, because this goddamn mother hubber would be suffering right there with me. And not like in a 50 Shades of I want people in pain kind of way, but more like seeing him suffer would make me smile, okay? I'm not gonna like hit up Chica afterwards or anything like that, but I'm definitely not gonna lose any sleep over it, you know? And at 8, March of the Toreadors. If you're confused by this number, don't worry, I'm going to explain it real quick. March of the Toreadors is the name of the song that plays when you run out of power in FNAF. It's the song that plays leading up to Freddy's jump scare. It's also slowed down for the games, and it's a song released by Georges Bizet, released in 1875, and from my understanding, now in the public domain. And while that's interesting, I mainly use the name to illustrate the part of the game that I'm talking about. Having a tape or a Blair Witch style video of you running out of power would be absolutely terrifying, okay? I can imagine it. And if it was made in a realistic way instead of being something like FNAF VR or otherwise with just like some filters thrown on top of it, if it was actually real, it would be terrifying. Okay? That's the kind of thing that would give people nightmares, and actual nightmares, not like the ones that I have where I just wake up panicking, then I'm like, oh wait, no, like actually scary. And at 7, Midnight Motorist. While the gameplay of Midnight Motorist itself is pretty simple, the intrigue comes from the hidden lore that we get from this game, all of which is fairly well known to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure everyone knows it, actually. You know how it's called Later That Night in the files, and the secret area at the bottom that leads to the whole other section with the Mustard Man and whatnot? Okay, good, glad we're caught up. So, imagine that whole Mustard Man minigame section as a VHS tape. That would be pretty damn freaky, right? I mean, like, especially given the location and the fact that this is a house alone in a clearing in the woods, okay? Very Blair Witch Until Dawn kind of location there, alright? And even if you want to just use the gameplay of the minigame itself, that's still pretty terrifying. And you know what? Maybe even more so. I've said this multiple times, but the idea that anyone we pass on the street could have just walked away from a gruesome murder is something that is, I think, at least, is one of the scariest realities we all face. Like, I've made jokes like you're only alive because every human you've seen has chosen not to kill you, and in reality that has way more truth to it than you would think. And this VHS tape would be like any other. But considering how Later That Night is commonly seen as later in the night William killed Charlotte, I think the implications of it would be pretty horrifying. And at 6, security breach. All of it. Considering how there are cameras all over the Pizzaplex that we are able to tap into somehow using our Fazwatch, I think it's fairly safe to say that this would be a realistic idea. And honestly, I think all the security breach moments could work as a tape. I mean, like, come on, okay? Especially when Vanny distorts the camera around her and makes herself invisible to Freddy, okay? An invisible psycho bunny out for blood, chasing a kid around a giant Chuck E. Cheese mall for 6 hours? Tell me that doesn't already sound like a horror movie. Especially when you throw in like the low quality video that is associated with old security cameras and VHS tapes, okay? Slap on top of that some well-placed static at intense moments, and boom, you have yourself the next Paranormal Activity series. I just think that the concept of security breach as a whole would do well with this style of video. But if you want me to be more specific, give me a minute and I will be. Halfway through into number 5, finding Springtrap. Now, this is a moment that we actually didn't get to see, but the guys who opened Fazbear's Fright in FNAF 3, they found Springtrap in that back room, right? So why not have a tape of them actually finding the body? That would be some freaky shit, man. Especially considering how we know exactly what happens because of this discovery. The pathetic fallacy of these guys not knowing what they've done, but everyone watching knowing what this leads to already creates a pretty damn compelling feeling. But then throw in the horror and the fact that we know it's William Afton Hartley clinging to life because he's stuck here until the one you should not have killed decides to let him go, and it just gets worse. But they also think that it's an animatronic that somehow just still works. So yeah, definitely something that would be an insane tape. Add to that the fact that we haven't actually seen this before, and I think we all love it. And at 4, Security Puppet. Another mini game from FNAF 6 that I think would make an incredible video, Security Puppet. And I mean like the whole finding Charlotte dead outside in the rain thing, not the whole do nothing until the final round because the green bracelet is stuck outside thing, okay? Because genuinely seeing this from the puppet's POV with like the green bracelet being highlighted and maybe even the only thing that is actually in color on the screen would make this so much more impactful, okay? The pain that the viewer would feel as we slowly crawl out to her bleeding body would be insane. And imagining like the sound effects of like faint screaming or like crying from Henry that we could also have in the background that gets slightly louder as we crawl, I'm actually getting chills right now. It doesn't even need to actually look realistic. You could do this in Source Filmmaker, and as long as the atmosphere is right and you have the sounds right and whatnot, it would be absolutely horrifying. Okay, I would hear those screams as I'm falling asleep, and I'd probably never be able to sleep again. Just saying. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, the Afton ending. Okay, well, if you don't want to have the whole security breach game be a VHS, okay, how about the canon ending, or the Afton ending as some call it. The canon ending to this game is some of the most insane luck that Gregory experiences in his whole time at the Pizzaplex. This sort of thing is like catnip for these types of videos. I mean, when have you like looked at one of these or like watched a found footage thing and thought, wow, this is so unlucky? Never. Okay, they always somehow end up having like lucky thing after lucky thing happen to them. So let's take us falling into the room and then fighting off these robots. Just make it a damn VHS tape. Since honestly, trying to do the whole of Security Breach may be a little more ambitious than most people could reasonably expect, but that's just kind of the person I am, though. I end up thinking of cool things after cool things, so then I add them to the project, and then it inevitably becomes too ambitious that now it seems like a mountain I have to climb, so I give up. But then I also don't want to make the mountain smaller because all of these things would be so cool and I've already thought about them and want to include them. So yeah, it's happened with literally every project that I've had in mind, and it sucks. So how about this one, we just cut it down to the Afton ending? Is that better for anyone who can actually animate and do it properly? I hope so. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Claw. Elizabeth Afton getting grabbed by Baby is one of the most terrifying moments in the series. Possibly because Crying Child might have seen it, which would explain the mouths on the Nightmare animatronic stomachs. However, if we were to see a tape of this moment from Crying Child's perspective, whether that detail be canon or not, oh my freaking god, that would be so utterly terrifying that we may actually, I might actually freeze, okay? I don't know how to explain why a kid hiding in the bushes while his sister is grabbed by an animatronic claw while trying to get ice cream would be so shocking and horrible, except for how I just did it. But especially considering that this kid ends up turning into an absolute psychopath after this, and by that I mean Elizabeth, not Crying Child, but still, okay? The found footage that's of someone hiding for some reason is always scarier than someone who's in the middle of the action, because I feel like if you're hiding, you can point the camera at the scene, but if you're filming it and you're in the action, you're just filming your feet as you run away, because you're focused on running away, not filming it. Plus, in general, this is just a f***ed up thing to watch happen, be it in person or on video. And finally, in at number 1, scoopening. Okay, now, I know that you may be mad and may think that this is a stupid point, but hear me out, okay? The scooper may seem like a weird but normal thing, at least by FNAF standards at first, but with the blueprint revealing how this thing actually works, seeing this in third person from found footage would be absolutely atrocious. This thing can inject whatever it ends up scooping with Remnant, which is a molten metal possessed by souls, and it keeps a person alive after removing their insides, replacing it with robot parts, and then having those robot parts leave that body. In essence, just making that person a walking case of flesh. Do you really want to watch that happen from a security camera? Or even just watch it happen to someone else, okay? No. In Sister Location, we see it in first person, okay? All we see is just basically a mighty machine digging into our body. But from the outside looking at Michael, we would see so much more. And if it's from Ennard's perspective, it would only be worse. That's all the time we have for today, friends. Thank God for that. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been Charmaine Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, okay? Just remind yourself, do it.